Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk about Sitecore Marketing Training. I'm going to specifically talk about profile and pattern cards in Sitecore. I feel like this is a kind of a rare topic for developers to talk about, but it's a very important topic about Sitecore. Consider the fact that companies come to use Sitecore because of the marketing features that are available within the stack of Sitecore. So we're going to talk about pattern cards and profile cards, but we're going to start going through more areas of marketing or Sitecore marketing in the next few videos I'm going to do. So let's get started. Who am I? I am Dylan Young. I'm a manager of platforms. I currently work at Aero Digital. I live in Palm Beach, Florida, and I've been working with Sitecore since 7.2. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so via my blog or my LinkedIn or my Twitter account. Um, and yeah, so if you have any questions about marketing or you're trying to achieve some sort of goal, reach out to me. Tell me about it, and I maybe can recommend some sort of direction for whatever you're trying to achieve. All right, so we'll start out by talking about terminology. So this is probably the most complex part of pattern cards and profile cards is the terminology behind it. It's very confusing for somebody that's never worked with these parts of Sitecore marketing, whereas other areas like engagement plans or just experience profile data, etc., is a little bit easier for you to conceptualize and work with. So let's talk about some of the main terminology that you're going to see. So you're going to have typically a profile. A profile is really just a categorization. The name is kind of misleading. When you see profile, you think user profile, but that's not really what it means. It's more of a categorization of a user. So you could have um, function as one of those. You could have types of content they view, um, etc. I'm going to provide some examples with this tutorial or demonstration I'm going to show in a little bit. I think that's going to kind of clear that one up a little bit because just me describing it is kind of still rather confusing to see what I really mean by a profile. A profile key is really just a kind of a definition for this profile that we're going to create. So we're going to be able to create multiple profile keys that define a profile. So for example, you might have a profile that is, content type or something like that. So you want to track users that go to your website. You want to track like what types of content they go to. So your profile keys could be articles, videos, events, things like that. So you'd start setting these key values or definitions about the user articles or types of content that they're viewing. Uh, so once you make up a profile key, then you go into defining what is a pattern and a profile. I'll start with a pattern first and foremost. So a pattern card is just a definition that says, hey, these profile key values make up this pattern. So if, for example, you're tracking types of content, if you had profile keys that were articles, videos, events, etc., you might want to determine that this user loves this type of content or these types of articles. It's a very basic example, but you could have a pattern card that says if their profile key value equals for article content equals 5, then they are in the article pattern card, for example. Um, and lastly is the profile card, and a profile card is just so when you visit a certain piece of content, such as you might have a specific article on your site, you could set profile cards to that piece of content. Uh, that card would tell it that if they visit this article, that they get 1 point towards their profile key article type. Um, and then as they build up and they visit more and more pages, they they will generate more and more uh, points towards that profile key, which then at some point, depending on the pattern card's values, you would trigger a pattern card and you'd be considered part of the, article type, um, pattern card. You're a article viewer connoisseur. You love articles, not necessarily videos or other types of things. This is not necessarily a scenario that you're really gonna necessarily worry about too much. What you're really trying to learn about your users is what kind of content are they looking at, and how can you turn that into some sort of profitability, such as doing some sort of personalization based off their matching of that pattern card. Some things I'd like to say about pattern cards is that first and foremost, you can only be matched up, or a user can only be matched up with one pattern card at a time. So there's an algorithm that's taking place in Sitecore that's as you get points, or your profile cards are being assigned to types of content, and as you start visiting different types of content, you're kind of getting these points, and eventually you're going to be triggering patterns or your pattern cards. So there's an algorithm that goes into all the content you visit versus the points you get, and then it calculates your pattern. They're the pattern cards that map or match most closely with the type of user you are. I will say from trial and error that a pattern card is only triggered. There's a setting in Sitecore where you can say don't evaluate the pattern cards until the user has visited X number of pages on the site. So by default, that's 3 pages, and then once they've visited 3 pages on the site, then they start triggering pattern cards, and then you can start personalizing your content based off these pattern cards. So lastly, before we get into demonstration, I want to talk about the purpose of all this. So this really relates, all this topic really relates to the user visiting pages on your site. So this isn't really going to trigger, well, you could trigger additional marketing processes from determining that they're a part of a pattern card, but this is more content related functionality. So or more based off the actions of the users will trigger specific pattern cards on the site. So if you want to determine that they are actively looking at snow gear on a outdoor shopping e-commerce site, and you want to determine that they look at mostly snow related stuff, as they visit the site, you can learn more about that user. They'll start to match these pattern cards, and at that point you can start to personalize content based off that. That's really where the magic happens. So they've looked at all this types of content. We've now started to match them to a pattern card, a specific pattern card, and then based off that pattern card, we can start to market to that user specifically based on that pattern card. And then what that really leads to is now you're personalizing based off their visitor traffic. So we now know that they're really interested in snow related products. So we will now offer ads or things across the site that kind of promote that need from the customer. So that's the purpose behind it. Next, I'm going to kind of demonstrate just kind of what example I just provided. I'm going to show you how to make these changes inside Sitecore. I might go into a little bit of a personalization that you might do as well, and kind of demonstrate all this within Sitecore. So let's go on into that. All right, now back to the demonstration portion of this training session. So now we're inside Sitecore. We're in our example Sitecore setup that we've been using for other Sitecore training videos. So we're on the dashboard or launchpad of Sitecore. You'll notice that there's these marketing applications, the content editing section, a control panel, and the access management. We're going to be focusing on this marketing application section of the launchpad. So in order to start setting up pattern cards and profile cards, and some of the other attributes such as profile keys, etc., you will be working outside of the marketing control panel. So we'll click on that. Now, once you're inside this, you'll notice there's a lot of different things inside here. We're going to be working with the profile section, but you will notice that there's goals you can define, campaigns, and other various things. These are all kind of relate to different areas of the Sitecore Marketing Suite. So let's go ahead and look at profiles. So profiles is just a container folder for all the profiles that was the first term that I defined previously. So like I was mentioning previously, you might create some sort of content type profile here. So focus is one function, persona is kind of a whole nother topic that's outside this training session, which I'll talk about later. And then there's score. So what I'm going to do for this training session is just create a new profile, and I will just call this content type. As you're defining all these folders or profiles, it's important to kind of classify these maybe a little bit more broad, not so specific as content type. So, but for this session, we'll just call it content type. There's various settings on this, so you could set the type to average or sum or percentages, as well as you can even set a decay rate of how quick the that subset of profile data decays. So inside the content type, now you'll see that there's two folders. These are pretty much what the topic of this session is. You have a profile card section and you have a pattern card section. So to start out, like I said, typically we'll start defining profile keys for this profile. And then the patterns will be made up of multiple profile keys, and based off these values, we'll define a pattern that matches certain profile key variations. So for content type, we're going to assume that we have a profile key for article, a profile key for video, and let's also create a profile key for audio. So all that's been defined, and you'll see that when you start adding pattern cards and profile cards, that these values, these profile keys, are actually pulled in to definitions when you're creating them in here. But before we go into that, we'll define the max values for these. You can define min values as well as default values, but typically you'll only find that most installations only have a max value defined. So we'll say the max value for each of these is 10. So, and you can make these as big as you want. I would say if you have a pretty expansive definition, like you have a lot of profiles and a lot of profile keys, you might want to make a higher value for these, just so it's easier to differentiate different patterns based off, a large subset of different types of scenarios that you might have. So I'm going to call these, just because these are all small, I'm just going to give them all 10s. All right, so that's pretty much it. Now that that's been set, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just define a pattern card. So it's really just going to be a very simple pattern. I'm going to say that if people visit a lot of articles, then they'll be added to an article pattern card. So I will just call this article pattern or article card. You don't necessarily have to give it the suffix of card, but it's up to you how you want to name these. Typically, it's probably a good idea to give it a description as well as an image. But lastly, the most important part is where you define the pattern. So, and what's really cool is this kind of matrix style, cool look kind of image will change shape. If you had a lot of profile keys, you'll notice that this would probably be a square. If you had 8 different types of profile keys, then you might have an octagon here, where you'd, depending on these values that you put in, you'd have this kind of really cool looking thing. But you'll notice that it's got points for the three profile keys you originally defined. So now that you're defining a pattern card, the intent here is that when certain values are added to certain profile keys, this pattern will be added to the user. So we'll say that if the user has visited or has 10 points of article, meaning they are definitely looking for articles, then they will be added to the article card pattern card. You could make this something else. You could say, 8 of this, and some of this, and some of this, and come up with this really cool looking matrix style diagram. But it wouldn't really make sense for this. Like, if they're going to be added to an article card pattern card, then they are more than likely going to be very high on the article side. So I will just, I'll just set this to 7, because if there's zeros in all the others, but they're at least somewhat interested in articles, then they are definitely going to be part of this pattern card. So now that that's done, we'll just go ahead and save this. The last piece is a profile card. So the profile cards are assigned to content items, but you can also define custom profile cards or profile settings, I guess. I assume that's what the terminology is, to certain content types, custom profile card values. But it's probably a good idea to create profile cards if you are going to assign this profile card to a lot of different types of content, such as you might have different types of articles on your site. You might have a blog, you might have some sort of story, you might have some sort of press release, news, etc. And in that case, you would create some sort of article card for this as well, and then you'd assign it to those different content types that are all articles. So the purpose of this is you're going to add it to a specific page. So we're just going to give this a value of, to prove the point, we're just going to give this a value of 8. That should be plenty enough. Actually, we'll just go ahead and make it 10. So if this article card or profile card is added to any specific piece of content, it will immediately trigger the pattern card for article card. You could theoretically make the article profile card a lot less value. So it could be like 1. And then if you assigned it to a bunch of different articles, if they visited all those articles 7 times, 8 times, I forgot exactly what value I gave this pattern card, then you would trigger that pattern card, if that makes sense. So we'll go ahead and do that and save. So now that that's done, now it's time to go ahead and start adding this stuff to your articles or your pages or whatever items in your regular content tree you want to add these profile cards to. So we'll go back over here and click on Content Editor, Content, Example, and then we only currently have a home item. So inside this home item, we'll go ahead and start defining that when this page is hit, it will actually trigger a profile card called the one we created previously called article, and then when you hit this page on the 3rd time, of course, from my as you may have remembered from my presentation deck that you have to visit 3 pages in order for a pattern card to be triggered based off a setting in the configuration. But once you've hit this page 3 times, it will be given a profile card value of article, and then because that profile card has a value of 10, which it will give to that user, it will then trigger the pattern card of article, which is saying that if the points towards the profile key article is greater than 7 or 8, whichever I had set it to, then it will trigger that pattern card. So if I click here, we'll see that now the content type that we had defined is now displayed. So we can click Edit, and you'll see that there's the article card profile card that we originally defined. So I can click this and I can click OK. I had also mentioned previously that you don't necessarily have to define a profile card to assign to a piece of content. You can actually customize these on the fly. So you could say, you could have profile cards defined across the board, but then on specific pages, you could define that this article only gives a 2 value versus a 10, because maybe there's something about the article that makes it less of a trigger for a pattern than, let's say, another article or the standard articles across the board. So that's just something to keep in mind when defining these. We're not going to customize this. We're just going to select that article card and click OK. Now you see it's defined. You can actually assign more than one profile card of different profiles to a piece of content. So you might define that you want, I don't think there's anything defined in here, but you could say that this is a practical article or whatever this is defining around. So and then it could trigger all these different point values when you visit these different types of articles, and then that would trigger different pattern cards based off these points that you're getting. So article card is what's defined. I'm going to click OK. Now you'll notice a new icon displays. It just shows basically that profile card that we defined. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then I will publish the change. I'm just going to do a site-wide publish site, smart publish. All right, so once that's done, let's just go ahead and we're going to go ahead. It's a little bit of a rare scenario, but we're going to have a personalization setting on the home item that when the article, when the pattern card for article is set, then we will show a different type of piece of content or a different HTML block in this example, just because we don't have many things defined currently in this Sitecore instance. So I'm going to do presentation details, and we'll, as previous articles shown, we basically defined these in the past. We're just going to change this HTML block to be personalized based off different rules. So we're going to go to controls, and then we're going to click on HTML block, and then now you'll see that there's an option for personalize. We'll click on that, and then what we can do is we can define a new option here. So personalized pattern is what we'll call it. We'll say it's going to show this block. Let's do this. We're going to hide the block by default, but we're going to show it when show that same home item, basically the context of that that HTML block when that pattern card is triggered. So we're going to go ahead edit the rules. There's a lot of rules in here. We're going to be looking for the one under the visits, I believe. And then we're going to select the option where the current visit matches the specific pattern card in the specific profile. So we'll select that, and then it's going to tell you that you can't do that. You have to select profile first. So we'll select profile, and we'll select the content type, and then we'll select the pattern card, which is the only one we have defined is article card. So we'll click OK, and we'll click OK, and now that's set to be personalized, and we'll show just a current context item, which is just a home item, and we'll click OK. And if this isn't if that pattern card isn't met, then we will just not show anything on the home page. So we'll click OK. Click OK again, and like I said, it's going to show this text if the pattern card is hit. So I'll click Edit, and I'll change this to pattern card is met, meaning they are article connoisseur viewer. I'm not sure how to spell that. Save that. So I'll go ahead and publish this again. Publish site, just make sure I got everything. It's been published. So now what we're going to do is going to go to the same site, example 8.2. You'll notice that nothing is showing for the other 6x6, the HTML block that would show up on the home page. We're still seeing what we created last time in the controller rendering demo, but we're not seeing that yet. Also, keep in mind, we do have it triggered to be on the home page. When you hit the home page, you'll get a profile card that sets the article value or the article profile key value to 10, which would then trigger that pattern card, because the pattern card says if you have a profile key of article that's greater than 7 or 8, whichever I had set it to, which will be triggered when you hit the page with a profile card value of 10, then you will now see the thing. The only problem is, like I mentioned, there's a setting that says, if you must visit 3 pages on the site in order for you to start seeing or for a pattern card to be triggered. So I visited it once, I'll visit it again, and I believe on the 4th time I will now see the thing because like I said, the setting, and I've now been given that pattern, or I've been assigned that pattern card of article. So I'm an article user. Technically I'm a home viewer, but for this example, I'm a article viewer, and I've been triggered that pattern card. So that's pretty much it. You can kind of see where this can lead you down a potential path of, you can start to kind of tag articles across the site. You could tag primary sections, for example. You could say, oh, the user visits this event or these types of events often. They're very interested in our organization. Maybe they want to, maybe we should show them, this type of, event that's coming up on the home page. You could also not just show them ads, you could show them forms or other click-through CTA type offers to kind of lead them and to get more information about them. And there's a lot of potential possibilities with this. So I hope this is kind of eye-opening for you guys. It's, like I said, it's a lot of terminology and it's a little crazy. I mean, you can tell that even when I'm talking about it, it's a little challenging to understand just the terminology. But once you get an idea of how it's used, I think the terminology will will become more natural, and it'll become easier as you move along and you start actually setting up some of these profiles to then start triggering different types of actions. Like we did the example of the types of content they visit, but you can develop trends based off, the type, not necessarily the type of content, but also just, they like certain things. They're maybe looking for more informational type pieces of content versus they visit, forums or start purchasing things. There's scenarios like that. So, okay. All right, that's it.